Thank you, is this on? Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Jerry Belair. I'm with the Rhode Island Coalition Against Gun Violence. We're a coalition now of 89 member organizations with well over 100,000 combined membership. We have discussed all of these issues with all of our members, and we do that monthly. We take, for instance, the Coalition for Domestic Violence. We've worked closely with them in order to structure bills on domestic violence that work for them and work for us and work for other members of our coalition. To that effect, we've worked very hard with the coalition to support 2730. I think that's a bill that you were alluding seems to have finally met some level of acceptance by some members, at least, of the Judicial Committee. I would hope so. I know you're tired of this. I know I testified once at 3:15 in the morning, and I think probably tonight there just may be some people testifying at 3:15 in the morning again. We'd like to get a bill. We'd like to protect the people who are without any other kind of protection in the Commonwealth. 10 deaths in a year is a lot. 4 deaths in a year is better sometimes. Some years are good, some years are bad. But in any event, I don't ever want to compare those number of deaths and come to some conclusion that they're expendable in order to protect some Second Amendment right of people who are convicted of domestic abuse or people who are under a protective order while they're under the protective order. I hear this taking away someone's rights without adjudication, just a lack of due process. But don't we do that all the time? I mean, don't we arrest people who have not been convicted? We take away their rights to liberty and life. We put them in jail and we hold them until we try them, and if we don't convict them, we let them go. How difficult is it to take somebody's right to a gun for a short period of time so that we can potentially protect somebody's life simply because he's not yet been convicted? We do it all the time. We take away people's constitutional rights all the time without convictions. And this has the potential to save someone else's life. In 1994 and 1996, recognizing that the danger that domestic abusers posed to their partners, and unfortunately just married partners, the federal government enacted laws to protect those people. Rhode Island hasn't caught up. I'm not going to testify to the statistics or the facts. You've got all of that, and the domestic violence people are going to do a great job of that. But I think they'll make a compelling case, and I think they have. I just ask that we recognize the fear and the pain, and I've seen so many domestic violence victims of domestic violence testify or speak about what they went through, and I'm sure you handle these cases, Senator Archambault, so you know a lot of those stories, and I'm sure a lot of lawyers up there that handle criminal cases know a lot of those stories. And I'm just saying that we have to do everything that we possibly can to try and protect these victims. I've sat here year after year now trying to craft a bill with all of the players that's going to make everybody happy. And I just don't think we're going to get to perfect. And I also don't think that ideal is anything but the enemy of good. And so I think that at this juncture, we have a good bill here. I would say that it would be nice to couple this bill with 2691, which would remove guns from domestic abuse from those under protective orders while the protective order is in effect. I think that this meets the general requirements that the Second Amendment Coalition has wanted for an awful long time, and I think that the 2691 as a separate bill would cover what's missing in this bill and what the moms feel is in their bill that is missing from this bill, and it's important to them. So if we could pass both of those bills simultaneously, I think we'd be okay. No guns in schools. You know, we hear these stories about gun-free zones. And it's like we have these gun-free zones and all of these mass killers look for gun-free zones to attack. But, you know, that doesn't happen. If we look at all of these cases, there has never been a single one where somebody has been noted to have chosen a certain target because it was gun-free. In almost all regards, there's some connection. It's an employment situation. It's a school that they went to. It's somebody that they dislike. It's somebody whose religion they may not like. It's anything but a gun-free zone. And I've listened to the Second Amendment Coalition, their new story now, and it's a John Lott thing. Their new story is that the shooter, and I'm not going to use his name, but the shooter at Aurora passed several movie theaters that weren't gun-free and went to the first movie theater that was gun-free, and that's where he conducted the killing of 12 people and some 28 additional wounded, I think. The fact is that there was one theater 1.3 miles from his home, which was an Hispanic theater. It's a Latino theater where they showed films with Latino films, and then they also showed American films with Latino subtitles. The second theater was a dinner theater where they had tables and chairs and waiters and waitresses. Not a particularly good place to shoot a lot of people at once just because there's too spread out and too much activity. The next theater was the theater that he stopped at, and it's the theater that he generally went to, so it was his theater. It's like you all probably have your theater that you generally go to. That was his theater. They also said that there was a larger theater he could have gone to and done more damage at, but the reality was, this guy planned this very carefully. The reality was that larger theater was surrounded by an ice cream parlor, a restaurant, and stores. There was no way in, no way out. If you parked in the front, you had to park way back. He needed a theater where he could park in the back by the door so that he could go out the smoker's door, keep the door open, grab the guns from his car, and do what he did. That particular theater was in a standalone building. He was able to, and he had 5 pages of plans on how it was going to be done without ever noting anywhere in any of his book that it was a gun-free zone. So this issue of gun-free zones is a red herring. People don't choose their targets because they're gun-free. What does happen, though, yeah.
But let me take that another step. If putting aside the theater, because I presume that I don't know I don't have the command of the facts of Aurora like you do, but I'm not so sure how a movie theater can be gun free or labeled as gun free, because if I've got carry permit, I have a carry permit. But let's talk about the school situation a minute. And where there's obviously, whether it's designated gun-free or not, if someone is licensed to carry a firearm, wouldn't you want that person that's licensed to carry a firearm to be able to be there in a Columbine/Newtown type of a situation? I don't care what you label it. Gun-free isn't the issue. The issue is whether someone lawfully has a permit to carry. Now, we're going from domestic assault to a different area now. We're revisiting a different area. And I tell you, I served 6 years on the school committee in Cranston, and, the biggest issue that ever came before us was a prayer on the wall. And we can go at it for a long time about that issue. But I can tell you this, that if, God forbid, one of my schools in Cranston, and I represent a lot of them, were attacked by some person who had serious behavioral issues like all of these gunmen do, I would be the first person to be advocating that I would hope the social studies teacher has a license to carry a permit, a weapon.
Okay, so then we go to the risk-benefit analysis. So let's have a bunch of people in a school committee meeting or in a classroom with concealed carry permits, because anybody with a concealed
I'm going to answer you, and I don't mean any disrespect, but the scariest thing that ever happened to me as a school committee member, and it's just, and I very rarely relive this, but one of the scariest things that ever happened to me was when we were dealing with that very school prayer issue. That very school prayer issue at Cranston High School East. And there were way more people in the room about a school prayer than there were in this room tonight. Way more. We filled it. We needed a fire marshal at Cranston High School East. And the first thing that happened that day was they found someone walking aimlessly on the second floor of Cranston High School East. And what the police did, the Cranston police did, held the school committee in the principal's office while they released bomb dogs into the building, because we didn't know who was coming, where they were coming from, because we had gotten communications from everywhere. And I'll tell you what, if one of my colleagues here had a license to carry and we came under attack, God forbid, sure, law enforcement walks in the room now as I'm talking. But if they come in, God forbid, then I hope that we've got at least a shot, pardon the pun, at least a shot at protecting ourselves.
Yes, Senator. So what the issue is here is that when you have concealed carry permits, let's say you have a janitor with a gun or a lunch lady with a gun or a teacher with a gun, when you have these, or a parent on a school bus, or going to some kind of function, or anything. Well, parent-teacher conference. I mean, things that can get nerve-wracking. A hockey game. Things that could get exciting. There are people, by the way, believe it or not, there are some people with concealed carry permits that commit crimes with them. There's 784 people since 2007 who have murdered that were concealed carry permits. But
that logic,
right?
We should
No. But I'm just saying that these are issues that you have to be concerned about. What is the opportunity of a concealed carry permit holder to stop somebody who's walking into a school with let's take AR-15s for Sandy Hook? What is the opportunity by having those guns in there, and what is the risk of there being an accidental discharge? A teacher in Utah shot herself in the bathroom. A teacher in Colorado was putting a kid in a car to take him home and was transferring his handgun and shot the student.
Senator Archambault.
See, this is where I want to be clear. This is where I think the distinction needs to be made between two schools of thought. On one hand, you're espousing that, and you're a very bright man, you're espousing the argument that in a school scenario and there's someone there with a concealed carry permit, they may be the more likely risk. Not the mentally unstable individual who could be introduced to the environment and harm somebody. On the other hand, as Senator Lombardi's saying, I think, and in that scenario, he's saying it's better to have somebody there who's got a concealed carry permit, who may be able to thwart that attack or may be able to quell the situation. And you're saying, well, you've got the incidents of somebody shooting themselves. Let's clear all that up for a second, and this little hypothetical I've got. You're in a school situation, and a lunatic comes to that school with one intent. They want to kill. They want to kill people. That scenario, personally, no doubt in my mind, and I say no doubt, no shadow of a doubt in my mind, that I'd rather have someone on that premises with a concealed carry permit who could potentially put that threat down. I'd pray to God, and I'm a God-fearing man, I'd pray to God that there was someone in that situation with a firearm to put that threat down. I grew up on a farm. I'm like a broken record, right? But I'm going to say it again to illustrate a point. Is my wife, who I love dearly, is very much an advocate of moms demand action. And I'm more of a Second Amendment guy with an open mind, but a Second Amendment guy. I don't have a gun on the farm anymore. And as a kid, we had a shotgun, always ready for home protection. I live in a pretty dark, remote area. I think to myself, man, what am I doing? Shotgun's the best home defense. I really need a shotgun at that home defense. Extrapolate that into a scenario where you have this school situation and you've got a lunatic. I can tell you that if a lunatic came to my house with a gun, I don't have any defenses. I'm toast. I don't have the ability to protect myself. And that's a stark, sad situation. And I'm quite frankly a little embarrassed by it. I love my wife enough that I don't have that shotgun yet with the slug and the 00 buck and the slug and the 00 buck, because I know from being a police officer that the shotgun's really the best source of self-defense I have. Not a handgun, but a shotgun. So if it's a high school or strike that, if it's a school scenario and it's a choice between having somebody on that situation, on those grounds, who's got a lawful permit with a firearm, and they may be able to intercede and stop that threat, versus they may, in your scenario, respectfully, as I said, I don't say things I don't mean. Very articulate, bright man. In your scenario, with somebody who may be able to pull the firearm out and shoot themselves or cause some harm, it could happen. A lot of things could happen as well. I'm not with that situation. I'm going to roll the dice and take the chance that the guy who's got that permit, and I'm saying this boldly, the guy who's got the permit, I'd rather have them there. And the same thing goes for the crowded movie theater. I like to go to a movie once a week with my wife. It's movie night. Man, if I'm in that movie theater and all hell breaks loose and some lunatic comes in and decides to shoot and kill, and only a few seconds go by and people losing their lives, I'm going to pray to God that there's somebody in there who has a firearm on them that can potentially try to put that threat down. It's just a difference ideologically. We could do, and it's deep. But I do respect your argument. It's just two schools of thought.
So let's not make it my argument. Let's talk about whose argument it is. Veteran. I'm framing it.
So it's your argument here in the present context.
I'm framing it from my experience.
Fair enough.
22 years of working with Stop Handgun Violence as legislative director in Massachusetts, as president of the Rhode Island Coalition Against Gun Violence here, of working with ATF&E agents in Springfield, Western Massachusetts, working with the Springfield Police, working with the Boston Police, working with a significant number of law enforcement who have opinions on this issue. The veteran FBI, ATF&E, and police officers agree that an armed citizen opening fire in a panic-stricken movie theater, a shopping mall, a school, is only likely to make things worse. The majority of concealed carry permittees qualify by shooting at a stationary target. In Rhode Island, 75 feet away, 3 times 10 shots in 30 minutes. So you've got 1 minute per shot to hit a stationary paper target, 67% of the time, and you qualify for concealed carry. Do you know what a police officer?
Let me just
Senator
let me
Anjamal, just under the understanding that we still have a lot
I
more
got
witnesses
you.
to go, so let's be
I've
brief.
got you. We've got to make the point. Hey, I've got family in the FBI too, right? And tons of friends in law enforcement. I couldn't name one of them that would support the argument you just said. 180 degrees the opposite. The argument is that if you've got a firearm and you're lawfully trained and there's a threat, you could potentially put it down. I don't know why your focus is on somebody who's got a lawful permit to carry as being the threat, respectfully, as opposed to the lunatic who's on the prowl to kill. And it's a person who's lawfully there with a handgun who may be able to obviate the threat. We could move on, but I'm lost on that entirely.
All right, I'm going to just shorten this, obviously. This is my written.
Okay.
Yeah, I can get you all of that. This is from my work with these law enforcement people for years. I've worked. Were you here when I said? I didn't know if you were here. That I worked with ATF&E agents in Springfield. I worked with law enforcement in Springfield and Boston. I worked with law enforcement here.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
Sometimes we say things.
Yeah.
And the journal.
Yeah.
We're fully true.
Yeah. I'm happy to respond.
You're citing.
Okay, I'll be happy to send it to you. But so let's leave it here. Let's say who supports this particular bill. The Rhode Island Attorney General supports the bill. Governor Raimondo supports the bill. The Rhode Island Police Chief Association, law enforcement, supports the bill. The National Education Association of Rhode Island supports the bill. The Rhode Island Association of School Committees supports the bill. The Rhode Island Association of School Principals supports the bill. The Rhode Island School Superintendents Association supports the bill. The Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals supports the bill. And the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns. They've all voted in favor of the resolution in support of the bill. Tonight, one more school committee voted in support of the bill. That makes 20 this year. 24 voted in support of the resolution last year. We've got 20 so far this year, and we're going for more. Last year, we didn't go to any town and city councils. We are going to them this year. 5 town and city councils have voted for resolutions in support of the bill. So that's who supports the bill. Any questions on that?
Are there
Go
any
ahead.
questions?
I don't know, 20. Yeah. Oh, there's Pete. Yeah, great.
I'll have to call Chairwoman Ruggieri because they never sent me a resolution.
I can get that for you.
No, you don't have to. I can call Chairwoman.
Town council voted it down. Cranston Town Council voted it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Large capacity magazines, that's Senate Bill 2835. We strongly support this legislation and urge the committee to act favorably and move it to a floor vote. Large capacity magazines are used in a majority of mass killings in the U.S., and by limiting the number of rounds, there's a potential to limit the number of victims. There's no legitimate need for more than 10 rounds in either home protection, in hunting. In fact, there are limits to the number of rounds you can use in hunting. You're limited to 3 rounds for ducks, you're limited to 5 rounds for deer, and that's to prevent overkill. All we're asking is that to prevent overkill as much as possible of citizens and kids, that you limit the number of rounds in civilian-owned guns to 10. There's no utility value to large capacity magazines. There's magazines that can hold as many as 100 rounds. And since we know of the increased lethality of these devices, what arguments are left to allow them to stay in the civilian market? Manufacturers, I can't see the difference between a 40-round magazine and 4 10-round magazines. It would seem to me that you make a slight adjustment and you sell more magazines, they're just smaller. Connecticut limits magazines to 10 rounds. Massachusetts limits magazines to 10 rounds. Yeah, they do. New York limits to 10 rounds. Maryland limits to 10 rounds. One of the things that we see, and we see this a lot between New York down the Iron Pipeline, between Vermont down the Iron Pipeline for gun exchanges to Massachusetts and to sometimes to Rhode Island, but mostly Massachusetts and Connecticut, is the opiate problem emerges on the other end. So it's an arbitrage deal, basically. They bring their guns down to Springfield or Hartford, and they trade them for opiates, and then they bring the opiates up to Vermont. Vermont's number 7 in opiate problem and fentanyl is now coming in. So what's happening is that when you have a product that you can't get in one place or in 2 places, and you can manage to trade one for the other, then you arbitrage it. You sell the heroin for much more money than its value was for the gun that you sold for a higher value when you bought it in Vermont. That's one of the concerns that you could also see here with large capacity magazines. Since our surrounding states don't allow large capacity magazines, there's a potential that you could have become a source state for that, and in return absorb some of the damage that can occur from opiates. So we think that 10 rounds is enough. I've been a gun owner my whole life. I have a shotgun. I have a handgun. And I did, when I was 6 years old, shoot my first pig on the farm that I lived on. So, and my last name is Canadian. We have so much in common, Senator. I know.
I just want to clarify. I just want to clarify for the record. I just called the chairwoman. I know what I read and when it's sent to me. Cranston School Committee did this week, approved it this week, endorsed this bill this week. We have not received it yet, so I know I didn't see it.
Yeah.
The Cranston Town Council voted it down.
That's right.
So that's what happened in my town. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. I just want to talk about 2 bills that we strongly oppose, and then I won't go any further. I had some others that I wanted to talk about, but I won't, because Frank took up so much time. Thank you. And he wants more. Reciprocity. We have a serious issue with reciprocity. We don't believe that reciprocity should ever be allowed. We've got 4,200 concealed carry permittees here. Concealed carry reciprocity with a number of states has the potential of bringing in thousands more without our knowledge. We also have the potential to bring in people who, if they were Rhode Island citizens, would not be permitted to carry a concealed weapon. But they would, because of the reciprocity. And that primarily comes with a very important part of our laws in licensing, and that's the right for a police officer to say, you pass a background check, but I don't think you should have a gun because I've been to your house 4 times for domestic violence calls, and the victim just won't testify or won't file a complaint. But I know, even though you can pass a background check, I know that you shouldn't have a gun. That doesn't happen in other states, in a lot of other states. In some states it does. In Massachusetts it is. It's discretionary in Massachusetts, not only with handguns, but it's discretionary with long guns as well. So all police chiefs have the discretion to deny. You have an FID permit in Massachusetts. All police chiefs have the right to deny an FID, a firearms ID card, on discretion, with discretionary purposes, with discretionary means. Now, it makes some sense, and I know Rhode Island's not ready for it. It makes some sense, and it makes some sense today, because long guns are no longer a 30-06 or a 30-30 or a 12 gauge or a 10 gauge or a 12 gauge. They're now AR-15s. They're now AK-47s. Those are long guns. And we have no discretion with respect to allowing someone to go buy a gun like that, military-style gun like that. There is no discretion whatsoever. Massachusetts has that discretion. So reciprocity, I'm just, I heard Frank, I gotta take him aside, because he testified at one place the other night and said that, he can't get to Bristol from Providence without going through Massachusetts, and as a result, he's got to buy a $100 permit in Massachusetts. And I was, I tried to catch him and say, look, follow me home. I go that way every day. It's 95, 195, exit 7, 114, bada boom. You're there, right? I was just trying to save him a little bit of money, but now he knows. So reciprocity, I understand that that they're saying that it would be great if we had if we gave reciprocity, that we could go to them, and they, being the kind folks that they are, would grant us reciprocal agreement. I can tell you after 22 years of working with the legislature in Massachusetts on gun issues, they're not granting anybody reciprocity under any conditions, period. It's not going to happen. I guarantee it. And there's not much I guarantee in life, but that's one of the things I will. Senate Bill 2647, I'll go quickly. Our biggest concern on this is discretion. It wipes out discretion in two ways. It redefines responsible person somewhere, and it takes all discretion away. I gave you one example. I can give you 100 examples, and you all know people. You all know people who could pass a background check, but who you would not feel comfortable with giving a concealed carry license. I had a neighbor who would come over, and I hate to bring it on a personal level, but she had mental issues. And she would come over every time we'd have dinner on my deck or something, and she'd stand in front and yell and scream and stuff. And then she'd come around and accuse me of stealing Channel 6. And then she was doing a lot of very, very strange things. But the police would come to her house probably once a week. They knew her very well. But she could pass a background check. And as soon as you do away with discretion, she walks in, passes a background check, she goes into the chief, and she says, you got to give me a license, and if you don't allow him the discretion, can you imagine what he's going to feel like having to give that license to somebody? And I'm telling you, they may be temporary situations. There may be situations with alcohol and drugs. There may be all kinds of things, because the chief of police knows his community, his or her community. And that's our last line of defense when somebody can guarantee to pass a background check, has not been convicted of a felony or a domestic violence offense. How do you stop that? If you take discretion away, if you make this a shell issue, you can put guns in the hands of people that you know damn well shouldn't have them. It's important. That's probably one of the most dangerous things that we could do here, is to take away the discretion of the police chief, who knows his community better than anybody else. Now, you have issues with due process. Handle that. Have a commission that reviews a denial. If somebody feels a police chief is just not just doesn't like people having concealed carry permits and has no really good reason, have a commission. Have them review it. That's your due process. And then finally a court but don't take away the discretion. You're just asking for trouble. That's all I have.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for this witness? Senator Archibald.
Very quickly, I agree with you on your comments on that last bill with respect to the discretion from police departments, and I think that's why the attorneys general really needs to work with Senator Lombardo on that bill, not picking on them, but to make sure that the police discretion is incorporated. It shouldn't all be under the auspices of one entity. The police are in the best position to know who is sound and who isn't mentally. I agree with you there on that.